Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode where we take a look at some of the most iconic cars ever built. And today's car is certainly no exception. It is, of course, the legendary Dodge Charger from 1969, so let's get into it. So the Dodge Charger had been around for a few years prior to 1969, but in 1968, they really sort of redesigned it with what we would refer to as a Coke bottle-style body. This design was penned by none other than the legendary Carroll Shelby, and this really made the car quite iconic because of the sloping roofline and the fastback design that it had. Now, the thing about this particular era of muscle cars is that they were built for speed, pure and simple. Aerodynamics was not a concern whatsoever. You can see how this thing slopes down so dramatically in the rear end. And even if there was any other type of body panels on here, like say if you had the police package, even with those, it still has a very much fastback, aerodynamically challenged design. Now, speaking of being aerodynamically challenged, these guys are known for having massive amounts of horsepower. They're also known for being incredibly heavy. The curb weight on these things, depending on what engine you had, could be anywhere from 3,500 to over 4,000 pounds. To put that into perspective, this one, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, tips the scales at almost 4,200 pounds. But when you have an engine that puts out upwards of 425 horsepower, it's not all that bad. That's a power-to-weight ratio of roughly a pound per horsepower, which is pretty good for the day. The big block engines that were available in this were absolutely massive. We're talking 426 cubic inches for the HEMI, 440 cubic inches, even the smallest engine, which was the 383, that's a pretty big displacement. And that's the engine that we actually have in this particular car. So this car does not have the HEMI, but it is the top of the line Road Runner. It's basically the second best engine you could get without having the HEMI, and the car is just absolutely stunning. It looks great in this color, which is the plum crazy, and if you don't know what that is, it's a shade of purple. But this one has been repainted, unfortunately, in more recent years. It wasn't the original color, which was green, but this looks fantastic. I think the plum crazy suits the car quite well. Now, the car was built in 1969, but it didn't actually get to the United States until 1970. And the reason why is because in 1969, they exported this to South Africa where it raced in the South African Grand Touring Championship. This car raced at COMMENT Circuit, which is a racetrack near Johannesburg. The guy that raced this was a famous South African driver by the name of Cyril van der Merwe. He raced this in the number 39 entry, and he used this to great success. This thing must have been a real handful to drive, being a 383 Road Runner in a country that already had lots of hills. Now, the interesting thing about this particular engine is that it puts out somewhere around 330 horsepower. It was tuned specifically for high-altitude racing, which is why it was sent to South Africa. But the stock version of this engine in the United States produced significantly more power. Now, the engine has been rebuilt, so we don't know exactly what kind of shape the original internals were in. But the owner bought the car with the engine already rebuilt, and he's only put about 5,000 miles on it since he rebuilt it again. This car is a numbers matching car, which means that the engine that's in here is the original engine for the vehicle, or at least it came in the vehicle when it was sold new. But the transmission is not numbers matching. Unfortunately, the original Road Runner, which would have been the 727 transmission, was taken out and replaced with this A833 for speed manual transmission, which is great for us because we get to enjoy driving a stick-shift muscle car. But unfortunately, it does detract a little bit from the value because it's no longer numbers matching. The interior is mostly original, minus the fact that the headliner is brand new. Everything else seems to be untouched, right down to the air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror. These things are absolutely cool, aren't they? Air fresheners have come a long way since then. Nowadays, you've got plug-in air fresheners that actually work and they last for months. Whereas these days, you'd probably have to replace this every couple of weeks. The paint, like I said earlier, is not original. The original color was green. As you can see, they did a fantastic job on the bodywork. There isn't any rust on this car, it's completely solid. I couldn't see any bondo or filler of any kind on the car. So they really took their time and they did an amazing job on the bodywork. Like I said, it's absolutely stunning. And they put this gorgeous plum crazy color on it, which looks fantastic. If you didn't know what this color was, though, you'd probably think that it's purple. But it is a shade of Chrysler's famous purple, which they called plum crazy. Now, the wheels on the car are not original. The original wheels would have been painted a color that matches the car, either white or this plum crazy color. This color would have been an option that you could have gotten with your Charger, and it would have matched the body color. They didn't necessarily have to match the body color, though. You could have gone with the standard steel wheel, which is what most people did. But if you wanted to spend the extra money, you could have gotten wheels that looked just like this, but in your body color. Speaking of spending extra money, this car was fully loaded. It had every single option that you could have gotten with a 1969 Dodge Charger. One of the options that you could have gotten is what we would refer to as the RT package. Now, this isn't the Daytona, which is the most sought-after version of the 69 Charger. It's probably the second most sought-after version. With the RT package, you got a special suspension that was tuned a little bit more for performance. You also got a 4-speed transmission, which this car has. And you got an engine that was upgraded to make a little bit more horsepower. The engine in this car, even though it was rebuilt, is the Roadrunner 383, which is essentially the RT package engine. So this car does have the Roadrunner 383, which is the second best engine that you could have gotten without having the HEMI, and of course, you could have also gotten the Daytona package. The Daytona package, as I mentioned earlier, is the most sought-after version of the 69 Dodge Charger. Why? Because it was designed specifically for racing. It was designed specifically for NASCAR. This is one of the most aerodynamically sound designs for a muscle car from this era. In fact, it's probably one of the most aerodynamically sound muscle cars ever built, period, regardless of what era you're looking at. And this was specifically built for racing. They took the roof off a Charger, chopped it down, added a massive wing to the rear end, and these things were absolute missiles on the racetrack. They could hit almost 200 miles per hour at Talladega Superspeedway, which was unheard of at the time. Now, I do have a 69 Charger Daytona in my collection, but unfortunately, it's not finished yet. So you'll have to bear with me while I show you a picture of it. It's not a numbers matching car, but it is a real Daytona. It doesn't have an engine in it right now. I'm currently working on putting a 426 HEMI in it. And once that's done, it will be one of the most valuable cars in my collection. I don't plan on selling it though, I plan on keeping it forever. What about the Dukes of Hazzard, you ask? Well, the Dukes of Hazzard was a TV show that started in the 70s and ran through the early 2000s. They had a General Lee, which was a 69 Charger, just like this one. But the General Lee was orange and it had a Confederate flag on the roof. It was also supercharged, which is something that you could have gotten with the 383 and the 440 engine, but not with the HEMI. They did this because they needed the car to be able to outrun Boss Hogg and the cops, and they felt that a supercharged 383 would do the trick. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please subscribe. Thanks for watching.